5. Creating the very assassin that would strike 13 years later. I don't think anyone was more thankful that I was only 13 than my father. Or else I may have killed, like I planned. I remember being unsure of where all the hatred came from, having been quite passive as a child. Yet I threw my puny arms at him with the authority and mindset of a kamikaze, not worrying about the certain pain I was to endure when he began to fight back. But to my surprise, he didn't fight back, nor did my grandparents intervene. My guess was that they were hoping I would succeed in killing the man to whom they still blamed for ruining their daughter's life. No matter, it was fatigue that finally caused me to stop. My father either took a page from Ali's rope-a-dope or perhaps sought the beating as justified. Still, I don't recall how it began. It wasn't that I had 13 years of built-up frustration or agony towards him. Actually, I didn't have any real feelings towards him at all. Mother had always been very honest with me. She was never slanderous, merely maintained the stance that it was best that he stay uninvolved. I was in no position to argue. I have come to believe that it was the sight of him that broke my shock about Mother. He was there because she wasn't, in some weak attempt at replacing her. That's why I wanted him dead. I wanted nothing but her. Though my father wasn't to blame, he hadn't killed my mother. To be honest, he had only fucked her once, and that occurred while caught up amongst a patriotic high to the likes of which Canada may never see again. How was he to realize that he was creating the very assassin that would strike 13 years later? Growing up, my father was a figure that was unknown to me, though as any other hockey player of modest celebrity, he was known throughout. To some avid fans, my father was always an underrated pro, whereas to others he was too small and couldn't take it. Some were as brash as to call him a pussy before realizing who I was. However, whenever I was curious about him, I tended to find that the avid hockey fan knew more, or was at least much more forthcoming than Mother. But in all honesty, it didn't matter to me. He remained estranged, and thus became whatever I wanted him to be. His history became a type of legend, in the sense that it was rooted only within the words of others, or conjured when appropriate for some sort of personal gain. Only my father knows his true story. To me, he was nothing more than another character in the sitcom of my life, for better or for worse.
Stephen, I've been waiting for this day for such a long time. It pains me more than you could ever know that it had to come on such a tragic one.
My father lowered his eyes to his feet in what I could only assume to be genuine grief.
Your mother was the most wonderful person I've ever met.
Feelings of a second wind took over me, and I began to throw my arms in a fury at his broken spirit.
If you want me to leave, then I'll leave. I just thought we might be able to talk.
He uttered between blows. My arms fell limp again.
I know there is nothing I can do to make this easier for you, but I thought that maybe we could get to know each other while I'm here in town. What do you say?
Silence.
You must be hungry. You've been beating me for like 20 minutes already. Why don't you let me buy you a burger?
My grandmother tried to put up a silent protest, but my grandfather took hold of her arm before she could intervene, being late and a schoolmate. Truth being, I had worked up an appetite. We drove in silence with the radio acting as the soundtrack to the passing scenery. I had stopped crying, but I still couldn't look at him. Instead, I remained transfixed on the emptiness and the void that I held. I tried to stare off in the distance, but my thoughts returned to my abandonment. By the time my father had decided on a Happy Meal as the best way to win me over, I had already drifted into the warmth of my beautiful memories of my departed mother. It was only then, when alone, staring at the last remnant of the only woman he had ever loved, that my father finally allowed the tears that he had damned for my sake to flow. Sitting there, eating his cheeseburger, no pickle,